Good evening, all. Good to be here. Thank you, David, and thank you, Dr. Sri Kumar. Um, it is not the best day to talk about wildlife crime. As David said, I had a bit of a minor accident and a bit of a pain. So I'll try to go with a calmer presentation and will take as many as questions possible. I had a different plan for the presentation, but I changed it a little considering that I'm not in the best of my shape. Well, anyone can ask a question in between, David or Narendra or Dr. Sri Kumar, anybody who's handling it, handling the backend can ask me those questions. So I'll be more than happy to answer them. So that's all about the introduction. I work with Wildlife Trust of India, and since 2003, I work in wildlife crime management and happen to work on various species in trade and probably most part of the country. So happen to see and learn and understand a lot about wildlife trade. Activities. So I will be sharing a bit of what is happening in wildlife trade in India and what is the major challenges we are looking at. So that is the lineup of today's conversation. And as I told earlier, if there are questions, don't wait till the end of the webinar. You may ask, and that will be good. So my first thing is about when we talk about wildlife crime, people talk about species getting extinct and ecosystem problems and stuff like that. But people don't talk about what is behind this. What is the larger picture? The larger picture is pretty bad. I mean, wildlife crime has got a lot of connection with other organized crimes, like we have fake currencies, black money, tax evasion, because there are organized gangs, organized people involved in wildlife crime. Don't, if any of you are attending this, think that wildlife crime is not something which is serious. Sadly, you're mistaken. Wildlife crime is pretty well organized. Syndicates actually manage wildlife crime. Sometimes what we see in the fringes of the wildlife crime is petty crimes, like somebody hunting for bushmeat or somebody collecting something for personal consumption. So that is different. But the larger scene in wildlife crime across the globe is pretty bad, and it is connected with a lot of other crimes. There is a lot of corruption attempts, because if you are involved in crime, you try to smuggle things, you try to do things under the table, and that is when you try to corrupt officials and try to bribe and get things out. For example, a lot of us know that there is a lot of pet trade happening across countries. In most cases, these traffickers try to find the weak links in the system and try to bribe them and ensure that their shipments go without checking. I mean, how else you can imagine that container full of pangolin scales of ivory come from one continent to another continent, in shipping containers and clear customs checks and international ports. So there is a lot of corruption happening and corruption attempts happening. The unholy nexus of wildlife crime with the narcotics and illegal arms is pretty well known. I mean, please understand, people who are involved in organized wildlife crime, they are involved in many other crimes. I mean, a person who is involved in wildlife crime, who's a criminal, may not be bothered about other criminal activities. In my experience, I've came across with people who operate in the Indo-Nepal border a few years back. So it was pretty, common for them to smuggle wildlife goods like tiger skins or leopard skins or bones from India to Nepal, and from Nepal they used to get other things like fake currency or arms into India. So this was a pretty well organized network. So they are involved in these kind of things. And probably what we don't see or what we don't consider as very important thing is the invasive species and spread of diseases. I think this is the right time to talk about spread of diseases. This is a slide which I prepared about 5 years back. We used to talk about spread of diseases, which are zoonotic diseases, which come from one country to other country because of illegal wildlife trade. People were not that aware about it. Now, today, the entire world is talking about COVID. People are talking about wet markets and pet markets and everything. Now we are looking at and we are understanding that, the illegal wildlife trade has got a role in spreading of diseases. Invasive species is another problem which we are yet to see it in its full scale. It is just started in few places. We all talk about invasive pythons in Florida, or red-eared slider tortoises in the Indian freshwaters, but there are much more than that. And there are many other things when you look at wildlife crime and other crimes. There is a lot to talk about. So wildlife crime is not something which is simple. It is well organized. It is across the globe, and it is a threat to our own existence. Don't consider that if people kill tigers, it will be just a species is dying, a species is disappearing. But it is not that. It has got a much larger impact on our ecosystem and the planet. Well, I'm not getting too much into this. You look at animals and there are products. Like if you look at elephants, you have ivory, and you have ivory statues and bangles and a large number of products which is sold in the international market. If you look at tigers, then the tiger bone, tiger skin, which is actually used by, tiger bone is used a lot in traditional Chinese medicine, where they think that the tiger bone has got some magical power to cure your diseases. So this kind of beliefs actually fuel the trade. Things like pythons, skin is used for making bags. Also, let me tell you, in some countries, certain things are legal. So when we talk sitting in India and talking about wildlife crime, I always tell people that it depends on the country where you are in, and the crime is defined by the laws of that country. Many countries, farming pythons and selling their skin for manufacturing goods are not illegal. So there are wildlife farming happening in many countries. So we have to, first of all, we have to look at what is legal and what is illegal in each country. I suppose I could see a few international audience sitting here. So we have to look at the legality of wildlife trade. For example, people in the US or in Mexico, I think they can own a tiger. They can have a pet tiger. It is not illegal. It is legal. There are provisions of legal provisions which allow you to do that. In India, it is not possible. Having said that, I would like to touch wildlife protection in India a bit before we get into the actual session. In India, we have got a culture of protecting our wildlife. Largely, as a country, we are one of the best protectors of our wildlife. If you look at our history, our kings used to protect wildlife. Yes, I know some of you must be laughing already, saying that our kings also killed tigers. But if you look at, largely there were game hunting rules, and they killed a large number of tigers or elephants or leopards. But also they ensured that there is a population which survived. Also, it is part of our culture. I mean, probably this is the only country which is looking at wildlife conservation without understanding, without looking at what we get out of it. What is the profitability of wildlife conservation? In plain, simple words, I say that India as a country, we conserve our wildlife for the heck of conservation. We love our wildlife and we would like to. And also, we have got a strong mythological connections and religious connections and cultural connections with the wildlife. If you go to some of the forests in central India or in Northeast, there are all forest legends and lores about wildlife which they worship as God. So we have a different outlook towards wildlife conservation. Well, one of the older pictures. So having said that, we do have a lot of good practices in wildlife conservation. We also have huge problems. This photograph is not new. This photograph is probably a decade old. this was one of the problems which we faced. I mean, large number of tigers, leopards, and other animals used to get killed in India and got exported through Nepal to China because the Chinese wanted tiger skins and tiger bones for their personal use. There was cultural usage. There were Tibetans using tiger skins and other animal skins for the traditional attire, the chuba, and then the trade got upgraded into the trade of tiger bone because the traditional Chinese medicine talked about making wine out of tiger bone. So this was one of the major problem, or this is one of the major problem we faced in the 90s, 80s, late 80s, 90s, and in the early 2000s, and still in 2010 onwards also we faced. But let me tell you that there is a lot of reduction in this tiger and leopard skin trade in the recent years because of various reasons. It is good enforcement is one thing, and also there is a demand reduction or demand change in the market. So the trade is changing. The trade is not always the same. It changes. So how big is the trade? I mean, I'm not getting into the details of this, but wildlife trade is one of the top organized crimes. It is in league with the narcotics and arms or small gold, and UN roughly estimated that it is about $23 billion is every year, which is turning in wildlife crime. And please understand this $23 billion, or whether it is 1 billion extra or 1 billion low, I don't mind. But imagine this money which is involved in this trade is illegal money. I mean, illegal money in the sense it is black money. Most of it is transacted through very interesting banking methods or direct transfers and stuff like that. So we are looking at a large amount of money, wealth, which is pumped into the industry and which is supporting the industry. So that's also, we please always think about the money involved in the trade. I'll take you through the reasons of wildlife trade, like medicine. I'm not covering everything. A few of these things I'll be covering, like medicine, animal body parts to make. What are the reasons people look at wildlife? Again, a photograph from China. You can look at, there is a skeleton. I'm not prolonging the conversation. That's a tiger bone wine preparation thing going on behind this beautiful looking and angry lady who's telling you not to photograph that. It is simply because there is this animal skeleton in that, and there is bags full of herbs in that, and it is a huge aquarium, huge glass box, which is filled with liquid. This is actually what is the animal wine which they prepare. This was the biggest reason for our tiger bone trade. In the 90s, in the early 90s, I'm very happy to say the person who discovered the tiger bone trade was none other than late Ashok Kumar, with whom I worked almost 7-8 years. I always remember working with him with a lot of pride and happiness. So in 90s, he and his team discovered that more than the tiger skin, it is the tiger bone that is valuable in the market, and a lot of our tiger bones were going to China for this tiger bone wine. In the 2000s, I was part of a team which done an undercover investigation within China, within the so-called. I know there are international audience sitting here, but let me be blunt about what happened. So they managed to enter into some of those tiger farms, and on camera, in front of the team, they offered a tiger bone wine for consumption, and it was common there in many of the tiger farms that they sell tiger bone wine. So this was one of the major reasons. And even though China has a lot of captive tigers in their domestic facilities, but it's always the wild tiger which gets you the premium bottle of wine. To make it simple, a bottle of tiger bone wine in those locations used to cost about $300. And a small town in the Myanmar-China border, Mongla. If any of you are online, I mean, you're online, you can check it later. Mongla had an open market where, people openly sold tiger bone and tiger skin and other animal products, and also tiger bone wine. It was an open market where things were openly sold, like any of the markets it was like a vegetable market where people sold the wildlife foods. So this is our tiger, and this is our dead tigers. And yeah, this photograph is from Central India a few years back. This is a handwork of Bavarias or Pardis, which are the tiger hunting communities, who are notoriously famous for hunting tigers in our forest. I'm not getting into the details of their hunting method, but let me tell you, a large number of our tigers, whether it was in North Indian forest, whether it was in Central Indian forest, or whether it was in South Indian forest, a large number of our tigers were killed by these tiger poaching communities. They're excellent tiger hunters. I mean, trust me, if you want to see a tiger in the wild, outside the protected area, they are the best trackers. I mean, a Pardi or a Bavaria can take you to a forest and spend a few hours, and they can actually tell you where exactly you can see a tiger. I've done that a few times with them in the field, who became good friends or informers. And when tigers do come out of forests, and they tell you that, they teach you how to actually track a tiger on foot. Their tracking skills are excellent, probably much better than our scientists and naturalists. And their rules of engagement is totally different. I mean, I sometimes tell that, they should actually take a couple of sessions in our premium wildlife training institutes about, how to track tigers and the biology or ecology of tigers. So, can you imagine a Bavaria telling you that, the tiger left this place about 2 hours back, but it will come back by evening because this place is frequented by this particular tiger. The involvement of Bavarias and Pardis in tiger poaching is coming down these days, thanks to a lot of excellent enforcement activities by certain states. I will definitely appreciate the efforts of Madhya Pradesh Forest Department, Madhya Pradesh Tiger Task Force. I take the liberty to take names like Mr. Ritesh Sarotia, who led a team there, who's leading the team there, and the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, which is looking at the national level wildlife crime thing. So because of the organized approach of these enforcement agencies, there is a reduction in tiger-related crime or Bavarias and Pardis activities. The fun thing is that it is not that they are not involved in any illegal activities. So they understood that it is too much risky continuing in the business of hunting tigers and hunting leopards. So they found something else which is more lucrative, which is not exactly a wildlife crime, but they are involved in some other criminal activity which gives them some money. So as a conservationist or as somebody who's bothered about tigers and the leopards more than many other things, we thought it is a good thing that they moved out from this and got into something else. But sooner or later they will find it is difficult to run those businesses also. So what we are looking at is there is a shift in practices which is positively helping us in having a larger number of tigers in our forests. But be warned, don't think that it is the end of the crime. It could come back. So we should not think that Pardis and Bavarias out of the game. Maybe tomorrow there will be a new equation, new thing comes up, and they will come back to the trade. The main thing is the skill. If a Pardi or a Bavaria is not able to transfer their skills, these guys used to hunt for centuries. Their skills are transferred from one person to another person. I had opportunities to look at 3 generations of Pardis in the same case. Like there is a grandfather and there is a son and there is a grandson who are involved in the same case. So when you sit down and talk to them, they'll tell you that how they got into and how they got trained in the business. So there is a change happening in this one, which is probably for good, but we should be, you get many of this nice tiger or animal drinks in many countries, which is illegal. So this is one of the major source of demand for wildlife products. That's medicine. Also, we should not forget there is a lot of killing happening because of conflict. Um, Conflict is actually increasing these days. Um, Tigers and leopards are cats. You give them good habitat, decent amount of protection, and nice prey base, and they start breeding. And that's that's what is happening in most of our tiger reserves and protected areas. Our animals are increasing. When our animals are increasing, we are also looking at a shrinking forest cover. The habitat is shrinking. So for a tiger, a sugarcane field which is next to the protected area is as good as a habitat. So it will enter into that, and it will walk around a little, and it will try to, you all know tigers will try to establish their territories, and they get into conflict. And during their transit from one PA or one secure area to another, they come across with cattle, they come across with people. There is fairly good amount of conflict happening across the country. We all watch so-called horrible videos of tigers jumping at people, or tigers sitting on the top of a tractor recently in UP. Or yesterday I watched a video of a tiger walking calmly among houses in central India. So conflict is there. The moment tigers comes out, you have conflict. And whatever you say, conflict is going to be a major problem which you all will be looking at in the near future. The numbers of tigers are increasing, leopards are increasing, elephants are increasing. They will move from one place to another place, and conflict will happen. If conflict is there, there will be killing. That is the bitter truth. That is the price which we will pay for good conservation. If any of you ask me what is the solution, there is no solution which is readily available. We are yet to look at the problem in detail. From there to from tiger to rhinos, I'm touching a couple of species which were very much in trade, or which are very much in trade. Unlike tigers, I can't say that the rhino horn trade is down. A few days back, there was a rhino shot dead in Kaziranga by poachers, and if I'm not mistaken, they came with the AK-47 guns. In India, rhino poaching is largely concentrated in the forests of Assam, and well-protected area. And the way they protect rhinos got into controversies also. But we should understand that that kind of tough conservation stand. I mean, people like Bhupen Talukdar, who literally stood between poachers and or D.D. Boro, who literally stood between poachers and rhinos, protected us. And they were not standing there with bare hands or folded hands. They were standing there with loaded guns. And borrowing Bhupenda's words, it is the one who fired the shot first will talk. Tell the story. It was always a struggle for conservation. Today, if any of you think that we got a good population of rhinos in our protected areas, especially Pabitra, Manas, and Kaziranga, and even now in UP, it is because of tough conservation measures, and tough conservation measures which were largely enforcement oriented. And I personally believe that when it comes to organized crime, you have to be tough to deal with organized crime. And many of those controversies which are brought are not exactly what it is. Always please remember that always there are two sides of a story. So having said all that, rhino horn is a very precious thing in the market. I mean, this was a price in 2009. You can imagine what will be the price. A gram of rhino horn will cost you more than gold and platinum in the international market. And that's a happy rhino. This is one of the rhinos which my organization, Wildlife Trust of India, put back in Manas. We got this as a calf, and it grown as our baby, and then went back to Manas as a wild rhino. And that's a reality. Many of you must have seen this photograph. This is a rhino which got shot, and they scooped off the horn, and the rhino came out of the shock, and it was walking around, and in a day or two, and the next day morning it died. poaching is ruthless. Poaching is bad. I mean, people who come to our forest with an aim to kill an animal are not the nicest of the people you come across. Don't think that always this is poverty driven poaching. No, it is profit oriented poaching. I mean, people from Nagaland used to come to Kaziranga and tie up with the locals and get into the park where they know that making a mistake will get them a bullet shot. They come and shoot rhinos, and they're planned, and they know that if they manage to kill a rhino, they make a lot of money. So it's a high risk business for them. So it's a high risk. It's a ruthless activity of poaching. So I don't think there should be a lot of compassion when it comes to dealing with this kind of people. This is another. I'm showing you this bad photographs because people who are involved in crime are not angels. They are slightly on the darker side. Okay, that's about rhinos, and talk about bears. Bear bile trade is again something which is which is still probably happening in China, because Chinese medicine talked a lot about the power of bear bile. And if you remember, one second, I'm just adjusting my fan. Yeah, if you remember, even during the COVID season, you must have come across with the news that the Chinese government is planning to involve bear bile as part of their treatment towards COVID infections. So still there are people who believe in the powers of bear bile, and it's again a bad business. Bears used to be kept alive in cages, and they used to tap the bile from live bears. It was not a good business. Bears are killed in India also. Our Himalayan black bears or sloth bears are killed in India for bear bile. Bear bile is widely used in Northeast by tribes. They also believe that bear bile is a cure for many things, starting from a fever or or a headache or a bad stomach, or even jaundice. They think that bear bile is very powerful. So it is traditional beliefs that contributed towards this trade. Then we come across fashion. Fashion is also a cause for wildlife trade. When you talk about fashion and wildlife trade, I can never forget Chatush, the costliest shawl in the world, the legendary shawl which can pass through a ring. It keeps you warm, there is no doubt, but it also kills a large number of animals to make this beautiful shawl. It also provides livelihood to women folks in disturbed areas in Srinagar and in the neighboring areas, but it involves wildlife crime. It involves killing of animals. Shadush is very interesting because the wool is coming from Tibet. The wool is coming via Tibet through Nepal to India, or via Tibet to India via Kashmir. And the manufacturing of or the weaving of this wool is a traditional knowledge of Kashmiri people, and they are good with what they're doing. I mean, I really have a lot of good Kashmiri friends, and their artwork is out of the world. But the problem is that this wool is part of a larger crime. And there are a lot of arguments that the animal is not killed in India, the animal is killed in Tibet, or animal is killed in China, and it is coming to India. We are just weaving. No, we are actually being part of a larger network. Please don't forget, a shawl will cost you about 3 to 4 lakhs, even in India, a good quality shawl, and this money is illegal. This people who are buying the shawl is not going to make payments via bank transfer; they're going to pay in cash. So this beautiful shawl is going to, I mean, it's something which is not good. If anybody wants to know more about Shatu's shawls, go to Wildlife Trust of India's website. There is a link to a video, a shawl to die for, which will talk about a lot what happens behind the the not so beautiful part of the Shatush trade. This is Chiru, the Tibetan antelope, which is protected under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. So as per the Wildlife Protection Act, if the animal is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act, it doesn't matter whether it is found in India or not. I mean, it has a small population in India, that is why we kept it in Wildlife Protection Act. But dealing in Shatush shawl is illegal activity in India. This is a photograph which was taken few years back, so I can show the face. The person has got an illegal shawl in front of him. The one, it's different quality of wool, and this is where it is woven. It is woven by expert weavers, and then it is sold. This photograph is of a seizure in London by the Metropolitan Police, and they found this shawls were coming from India, and there are particular markings, so you know who is the supplier, which is the supply chain and all. So these shawls were caught in transit in London, and every year our customs agencies and officers in the airports by Wildlife Crime Control Bureau arrest people with Shatush shawls. But it is very difficult to find Shatush shawl because you have to check every baggage, you have to profile the passengers, and you need a lot of ground level intelligence before you get into the actual seizure. And there is aircrafts involved, there is air travel is involved. You cannot hold a flight for a long time. So there is a lot of practical difficulties in detecting this in airports, but they do a good job of detecting these shawls and controlling. These are again undercover photographs from Tibet, where the animals are killed and the skin is taken and they are left to rot. And you can look at the volume of the trade and the volume of crime, like large number of animals, large number of illegal arms, or you just look at the cache of bullets or cartridges. Like they go on 4x4 vehicles, kill large number of animals, and collect the wool, collect the skin, and come back to their base camps and collect the wool and sell it to India. Send it to India. Only in India they can actually weave the shawl. So this is a major crime which we have. This is actual Shatush skin. Few Shatush traders. Also, the usage of animal skins as decorative items, fashion again. This is actually fading away or faded away. Now you don't find people openly exhibiting this. Tibetans earlier used to use a lot of animal products, animal fur. We should understand they were living in cold climate, sub-zero temperatures, and animal skins or fur was in those olden days. That is what could have kept them warm, and that culture, that tradition continued for a long time. But then in the modern age, you get polyfill, you get goose down, you get so many other things to keep you warm without killing tigers or leopards or snow leopards for it. But some people kept continuing their tradition and what they used to do. The contribution of His Holiness Dalai Lama in stopping this practice is very much appreciated, and it is him who has done a lot in reducing the demand by the Tibetan communities. His Holiness told his disciples across Tibet that you should not be using animal products. We, being Tibetans and peace-loving community, should not be using dead animal skins which are connected to illegal activities and death and crime. Should not be using these products. And they wholeheartedly agreed to him. And they came out in the open. They burned their stockpiles of skins and tubas and whatever animal products they had. So then onwards, there was a huge cultural shift in consumption of wildlife goods by the Tibetan community. In the 90s and in early 2000s, if you look at wildlife crime busting, the Tibetan settlements were the targets of enforcement agencies, that there was um, uh, one or two bad elements in the community who are involved in the crime. Largely one of the beautiful communities and beautiful culture, but unfortunately there were, like any other community, they also had their problems. So, but today, if you look at today, the consumption of animal skins by Tibetans are, I should say, it's not there. Maybe few of them are still using it, but the demand has come down. People still use animal skins for coats and all. It's going away as a fashion statement. Occasionally you come across with some fools trying to wear an animal skin and come out in a public gathering. I don't remember, there was a photograph of a minister's wife who was wearing a leopard skin jacket, which was an ancestral property, but she was criticized a lot by everybody, and I don't know what happened, but if you wear animal products in public, I don't think that you will be appreciated much. Then the leather industry, where animal skins, especially snake or lizard skins, are used for making wallets and purses and all. Many countries this is legal, but in many countries it is illegal. Not getting into details of it. Things like this comb, which is made of a turtle shell. So, things which you can make easily from plastic, but you prefer to have something which is special. I don't know what makes this special. I suppose this will hold the hair properly in the right place. But so if you are buying one which is made of plastic, but people want to have something special, something exclusive. Probably a husband who goes abroad and go to one of this exotic location may want to gift something exotic to his wife, and probably that is what will drive the trade. So a lot of things which are in fashion, which is causing this trade. I don't know any of you can recognize what it is. It is the scale of pangolin. It looks like a nice armor. And pangolins were the highest trafficked wildlife on planet Earth in 2017, 18, and 19. And it was crazy. And now I think we are paying a good price for, all of us are locked down and sitting in our homes because there is some strange virus came from Wuhan and infecting all of us. And scientists are telling that there is a huge connection between the pangolins and the COVID-19 virus. I don't know whether it is correct or not, but I tend to believe it because the trade was so high that containers of live dead pangolins were shipped from African countries to China and many other Southeast Asian countries because they were consuming pangolin in their country. And probably it looks like pangolin is having final laugh. And the trade started happening about 5-6 years back. Earlier, there was not much of a trade in pangolins. Like in 2010, we never heard about organized pangolin trade. In 2012-13, the trade started, and then it became like everybody was talking about pangolin. Trust me, I never saw a pangolin in the wild for like 10-15 years. I saw one about 3-4 years back. That was the first time I actually saw a pangolin. But people were hunting pangolin in the wild, Central India, Northeast India, South India. Everybody was hunting pangolin. Many of the hunting tribes never hunted pangolin because pangolin was something which they hunt last. But when the demand for the scale came up, every tribal hunter was after pangolin. Like I remember a few of the contacts in the field were telling me that so अब आजकल तो ये लोग तो टाइगर नहीं मारते, ये लोग सब वो कीटी खाऊ मारने के लिए यार साल खपड़ी मारने के लिए निकले हैं. So the entire shift was there from tigers to leopard. They were hunting pangolin, and the price for the scales actually went very high, and crazy things like people were the trade was so organized. Some of the conversations which I heard was pretty interesting to hear. It was like a multi-level marketing thing, like a syndicate leader was telling his cronies on the ground, saying that you have to go to those villages every week, and you have to go when there is local market happening, and you have to have representatives in every village, so that even if there is 100 gram, 200 gram, it should come to you. It should not go to XYZ. So you have to visit, you have to take pangolin scales, whether it is 100 gram or 200 gram, bring it to me, I'll give you price. So it was well organized. But the trade has come down a lot, not because of COVID, but probably India was not one of the best sources to get pangolin scales. The largest seizures of pangolin scales in India was about 250, 260 kilograms in the Moray border, which is a notoriously famous place in the northeast India with Myanmar. So that was a seizure done by the border security agencies. The other seizures were like 5 kilos, 10 kilos across the country, many places. And the prices were very high in India. But when you look at the sources of pangolin scales from African countries, it was much cheaper and much larger quantities, like truckloads or a container full of pangolin scales used to come. So India was not a preferred source of pangolin scales, but of course there was a lot of trade happening. There were some good set of nexus which were operating in India. The trade has come down a lot, but again, it is to come down. We have to be careful whether it will come back. Sometimes there are questions about wildlife crime. What is wildlife crime? What is a crime? I mean, looking at people going to forest with a large number of cattle, is that a crime? I'm leaving it to you to think about these kind of situations, where a lot of questions are, lot of arguments happen. Is it the people's right, or it is wildlife versus people? There are a lot of questions happening. So I'm people collecting firewood, people using forest resources for grazing and all. So that was something. Then there is sport hunting. Again, it depends on the rules of the country. There are people who can pay a price and kill an elephant in an African country. So here we have to really look at whether it is a crime or not. I mean, when you talk about a crime is something which you do against the law of a country. So if in a particular country, shooting an elephant or shooting a lion, shooting any animal by paying a price is legal as part of that country's law, then we can't do pretty much about it. I mean, many times, there are international outcries and arguments and discussions, canned hunting or trophy hunting. The problem is the law in various countries and the conservation practices. The African game reserves follow a practice of conservation plus some sort of a sustainability, which is a different school of thought from the Indian way of conservation. So when you look at trophy hunting in various countries, you have to look at what is the legality of it. So anything which is legal in a country may come in the brackets of legal things. Your cultural background, your country background, your law, which is not applicable in those countries, cannot be considered when you look at these things. So people do hunt. I have my personal views. I don't know what fun you will have when you kill an animal which is already tracked and which is already set for you to kill. Probably people who actually kill these animals must have not used a gun. If you're really a hunter, or if you're a sport hunter, then you go to the forest on foot and hunt, probably like Jim Corbett, who used to hunt in the Indian forest. There is a difference between this kind of hunting and the sportsmen. I mean, they all called their activities are game, and what they got was a trophy. So there was a fair amount of chance given to the animal. It was your skill versus their skill. Yes, it's a very controversial area when you look at. I don't want to get into that, but it is there. So then I come to pet trade. Trade is trade in live animals. So when you look at this tarantula, you don't think that, many of us don't think that as a pet, but many people in the world think that it is a pet. So these animals get sold. I mean, one of the Indian tarantulas, Indian violet, so it is endemic to Western Ghats, and IUCN says that the habitat loss and fragmentation, collection of species for international pet trade. Okay, that is found in India, endemic, Western Guard, protected species, blah, blah, blah. You can buy it online. It is available in the international market. Now, many of you will argue that these are captive bred tarantulas. But my question is that how the first one went from India? Was there a legal export happened? Wait, I'll take you to the end of my presentation later, then I'll show you what happens, how this trade is happening. So this pet trade is becoming one of the major challenge which we are facing. And so people are fascinated by wild animals, and the people have got different tastes and different choices. The more exotic, the more costlier, the more rare species people want them. A few years back, I happened to be part of a operation where we looked at a pet trader who was selling stuff online. And we found these photographs from his emails. So that's a leopard cub. And on the top, it's an albino civet. That is what actually caught him in the net, because he was trying to sell the civet cat, which is albino, for a very exorbitant price to a buyer. But unfortunately, a couple of us went to buy it, and he was in trouble. Indian hill myna and peacock chicks. So he was communicating with traders all over the country, abroad, about selling wild animals. And he was on a regular basis, he was selling peacock chicks and mynas to other countries via shipments, air cargo. So the trade was going on. So it is one of the major trade, and it is one of the serious concerns. I mean, if you look, the amount of money involved and the amount of syndicates, I mean, the kind of syndicates involved in pet trade is much bigger than what you think. Let's see it a little later. You all know about the falconries of the Arabs. They probably love their falcons as their pets, or maybe more than their pets. Vivek, who heads Wildlife Trust of India, once told me that, hey Jose, you know, I was traveling in Middle East, and he came across with an Arab who booked an entire seat for a falcon. And Vivek, being a conservationist and done his share of undercover works in the past, probably got into a conversation with him and asked him, what is this bird? So he said, this Arab looked at me and said that, you know, it's not a bird, it's my son. So whatever they think, at the end of the day, the falcon belongs to the skies and to the hunting grounds of its own. It's not something. I mean, if you hold a peregrine falcon with leashes and allow it to hunt as per your whims and fancies, it's not the kind of life the falcon wants. And a lot of them die during transits and smuggling attempts. So pet trade is something really bad. People keep a lot different kind of pets. That's a snake charmer with his pet, and there is a bird of prey. I'm not getting into the trade of star tortoises or tortoises. If I'm not mistaken, the World Turtle Day. Yes, it is the World Turtle Day today. So the trade in turtles and tortoises are one of the biggest trade. There is a lot of consumption happening in live animals. There's a lot of consumption happening in meat, because in India, certain parts of the country, people consume turtle meat. But star tortoises or the ponterapins or roof turtles are all sold across the world from India. Well, very well established trade. A few years back, one of the kingpins were arrested by again Madhya Pradesh team and Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Manivannan, who is still in jail. This bugger traveled around the world selling turtles, and having a 7-star life. He has only done one thing in his life, was selling turtles, and probably he was one of the best. He had the best knowledge about various turtles availabilities, what prices and everything. He had a very good network. He used to get turtles from Madagascar, from India. I mean, the rarest of the rarest turtles. He had his sources of collectors, and he has his sources. He has his clientele who will pay a fortune for the rarest turtles, like the red crown turtle from Chambal was one of the most sought after turtle in the market, which was sold for a couple of thousands of dollars in the international market. So turtle trade is one major thing. Domestically and internationally, we find a lot of trade in birds, which is almost all parts of the country. In India, you cannot keep any wild birds, which is against the law. Perfume, industrial use. Of course, this is something which is no more happening, or not much happening. But musk pods were used for in the perfumery industry, where they manufacture musk from the musk glands. Not much happening. I don't say that it is one of the major threats, but still there is some poaching happening for the musk pods. Fish hooks. This is an interesting trade. Fly fishing, they use the jungle fowl feathers for making fish hooks. Now you get a lot of lures which are plastic or rubber or composite material. It's changing, but still some people prefer this kind of natural attractions. So it's again a trade. Collectibles like trophies and artifacts. I still can't understand, but it's curiosity fact that people buy mounted butterflies or corals and starfishes from locations. For example, Andamans. If you go to the airport, Andaman Airport, you will find a large amount of confiscated sea corals in the airport itself, in the customs checking area. Because many people go there and they see a piece of coral on the beach and they think that it's like a souvenir. It's something which will remind me of my trip. They collect it and they carry. Corals are protected under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, which means you are in for good trouble. It's a non-bailable offense. It will get you a minimum of 3-year punishment, maximum of 7-year punishment. I mean, carrying a piece of coral, and the act is not talking about what is the quantity. So, if you come across with a very strict officer and you carry about, say, 2 centimeters or 5 centimeters of coral with you, he can book you under the Wildlife Protection Act for a non-bailable offense. So please don't collect this kind of stuff from places. And also internationally, when you transport this kind of things, it attracts the provisions of CITES. Some of these animals are protected under the CITES rules and regulations, so which will attract trouble in immigration. So people collect a lot of things like trophies. If you can look at the old days, people used to kill animals and mount their heads or horns as trophies. Well, we talked about a few species. I can't continue. I mean, can't avoid elephants. Elephants are big, huge, and also they're part of the illegal wildlife trade. Yeah, good elephant, happy elephant, and not so happy elephant. This was a photograph from Corbett's in the early 2000s, where people killed elephants for the ivory. This is solid ivory and henko. Henko is a Japanese thing which is used by Japanese people for their signature. So instead of making a signature, they actually use a seal. This is the traditional thing. So if you are rich, you are powerful, you use ivory for making your henkos. And also ivory is used for making a lot of artifacts. This is something which I missed in my presentation. We always thought about ivory trade is largely the export of ivory. Like India, there is no consumption of ivory. But in 2015-16, few incidents in Kerala, which actually opened up a new trade route. And authorities understood that the ivory trade is not limited to the international trade, but ivory trade is well within India, because the ivory was taken from South Indian forests to Mumbai, Delhi, and Kolkata, and carving was done there by specialized carvers from various places. Like ivory carvers are like the Shatush weavers. Ivory carvers are a special breed of people with excellent artist capabilities. They were carving ivory, and a lot of ivory statues of Indian gods and goddesses were recovered from Delhi, Kolkata, and some other places in the country. That was an eye opener. We were looking at like 25, 30 crore rupees worth ivory statues in one place. I mean, uh, when you walk into a small one room house in a not so, what do you call, a not so good, if any of you start watching the Amazon Prime Patal Log, what do you say, the Patal Ki Log, that kind of a place in Delhi, uh, one of those ghettos, in a non-descriptive house, you open boxes and you find ivory statues worth crores hidden. That is when you understand that ivory trade is not the ivory export to China or Japan. Ivory trade has, unfortunately, a huge Indian market. And during the subsequent investigation, the Kerala authorities discovered that there are a lot of people who buy ivory and ivory products, like Ganesha statues made of ivory. You think that will bring you, good luck. I don't think any god will be happy to, how can you make a ivory statue, I mean a Ganesha statue with blood ivory? I don't think Vigneshwar will be very happy with you. So please don't think that, ivory trade or most of this trade has got an international connection. It has a very good Indian connection. Yeah, one of the age-old trade, and one is something which is coming on and off and on and off, is the paintbrush trade with mongoose hair brushes. Last year, there was a major bust happened in UP, in Shercote. About 10 shops were raided at the same time. The raid was coordinated by the North Indian team of Wildlife Crime Control Bureau under the leadership of Mr. Girish. There were seizures happened in Kerala. There were seizures happened in Maharashtra, a couple of other states simultaneously on the same day, same time. Seizures happened across the country to bust the network of mongoose hair trade. My team volunteered in this operation to collect information, and you will be surprised the kind of the volume of trade which was happening. Large number of brushes, a large amount of mongoose hair which was seized from these factories. And the demand is from the artist communities, because a lot of artists prefer the mongoose hair brushes as their preferred brushes. But please understand that these brushes, again, are not made from hair which is fallen from a mongoose. It is actually, a mongoose is killed for collecting this hair, and these brushes are manufactured. Sad trade. Internationally also there is a demand for these brushes, and people prefer these brushes, and the trade is currently under severe scrutiny by enforcement agencies, and hopefully this will come to an end. A lot damage is done to the trade already, and the pressure is on. I mean, when you fight a crime, crime is like an amoeba. You press it in one place, it changes its shape, it changes its base, it moves to another place, it comes out from there. If you think that Shercote was a target location, it was traditionally the hub of the trade. If you think you went and busted the Shercote market, you will find that the market is it's operating in some other place. If there is profit in the business, whether it is legal or illegal, there is always an enterprising criminal who is ready to make some money out of it, and that criminal is always there. I mean, probably somebody is watching this presentation and thinking that, okay, this is how they catch. But let me warn you: when you change the rules of the game, the other side also change the rules of the game. So your mongoose gets killed for that. I'll wrap up with the tradition and myth. This is the Northeast tribe, the Nishi tribe, who has to wear a hornbill beak for their social acceptance, and probably getting married, and whatever is the tradition. Some people told me that the tradition says that when you actually get a hornbill beak, that is when your clan understands that you are a good hunter, or you are a man who can hunt and feed his wife, and whatever is the tradition. But hornbills used to get killed for the beaks, because beaks are not something which is shedded like antlers. People kill hornbills for their beak. And when the economy evolved and you don't have to go and hunt yourself, you can actually buy the beaks, and you can pay somebody to kill a hornbill and get the beak. So this is tradition. And the hornbill which is not much aware about your tradition lose its beak and its life to your tradition. And you can look at community leaders, they have to wear the hornbill beak in public functions. uh, so this is something with on a positive note I want to wrap up. um, Few years back, the Wildlife Trust of India looked at the situation there, and that is when out of box thinking happens. uh, Vivek used to tell us that conservation is an art of possibilities. Conservation is not about science, and conservation is not about your knowledge. Conservation is an art. It's an art of possibilities. You make things possible when you think it is impossible. um, so you got a few NID experts um, with the wildlife conservationists, and they discovered that this hornbill beaks can be made of artificial material. And you get a few of those community youngsters together, and you start making artificial hornbill beaks, and you sell it to the community. I mean, community is happy, they get married, they have their life going on. uh, I think the women folks were very happy, because hornbill beaks were like gray in color, or one particular color. But when you make this artificial hornbill beaks, you can put some beads on it, you can color it differently, you can give different shades, and it does not get eaten up by termites or ants and stuff like that. More durable, more durable headgear like your husband. So maybe women were very happy, and they accepted this as a new thing. So that is how you look at a problem, and you find solutions to to overcome the situation. So that is my introduction about wildlife crime in India, or various scenarios. And as David told me about, talk about something which is new and something which is challenging. There are a few challenging things in wildlife crime or illegal wildlife trade in the country. As I told earlier, the crime always changes. You know, Earlier it was tiger skin, then it was pangolin, then it was ivory. The demand changes, the supply changes. But in the recent past, if you look at the cyber crime in wildlife is probably the biggest challenge which we all are going to face, because the technology enable you to connect with each other across the world faster, quicker. Your 10 Mbps connectivity or 100 Mbps connectivity. So that is used by wildlife criminals. So the age-old assumption or perception of a wildlife criminal who's a poor man sitting in the remote village is no more that. You have people who understand technology very well, for operating in the cyber world and dealing in wildlife crime. I, for our partner organization, done a study about wildlife cybercrime in the past, and you can see the results. I'm not getting into the details of it, but you can look at a study actually showed that a large number of specimens were available online. But look at the interesting things like reptiles. Listing of reptiles, it's very high. Ivory is listed. Other things like toads and frogs are listed. Birds are listed online. Everything, I mean, probably everything is listed online and traded online. So this is going to be the biggest challenge. This was one of our analysis in 2018. Now, this was done using some special softwares, and this is a turtle trade network which we were looking into as part of one of our work. you can look at how interconnected, how complex this trade network is. Um, Star tortoise and the spotted terrapin were the two species which we looked at. And these are people who operates across the world, their connections. And this connection diagram was unearthed only from Facebook connections. So Asian, European, and African suspects were interconnected using Facebook as a platform. I hope Facebook is not going to file a case against me tomorrow morning. But people use Facebook for a lot of illegal things. Any social media they use. But why I show you this screen is that how organized it is, how well connected it is, how certain larger players, like the color schemes and the size, define the role of the player. And this kind of an analysis also helps you to understand who are the players which you have to take away from the trade network. So internet, social media is actually used as a huge platform for them. WhatsApp is very actively used. The interesting things are, WhatsApp gives you end-to-end encryption, anonymity, and maybe some people are telling that, there are ways enforcement authorities can track you. But trust me, there are ways that you can mask your activity in WhatsApp groups also. There are ways to fool people. Like one of the traders was telling about how to get a activated mobile phone from other country and start using it in India through a open network handle. There are many methods to overcome this. If you are concerned about WhatsApp, then use Telegram. So people use WhatsApp and Telegram and other platforms on wildlife trade. I'm getting warnings that I am not supposed to spending a lot of time online. Take rest. I think that warning I can skip. The interesting thing is that many people who operates in the cyberspace is also aware about the Wildlife Protection Act and CITES regulations. And we came across with people who actually talk only scientific names. I mean, they don't talk the common name. When they talk about turtles, they talk about species. They talk about species, and in some cases, they talk about subspecies and the geographic locations from where the animal is originated. So the knowledge level among these people are very high. And in some of the discussion groups, they talk about provisions of the act, the provisions of CITES, and which is legal, which is illegal, and stuff like that. But what happens is that a trader connects to another trader, and then they go offline. I mean, they get into a direct messaging, and they start doing trade. It is highly anonymous, and it's very difficult to track. Okay. I'm sorry, I should have kept a few things hidden. So there are, yeah. I'm just giving you one example of people, a trader trying to sell turtles online, and this is how it happens. Like, they communicate with each other on WhatsApp. They show photographs, they show videos, they talk to each other, and they try to sell. And that's what is happening. That's what we are looking at this space. And you have online transfer mechanisms, like you can transfer money, and you book the consignment and you get the consignment. That's simple it is. We came across with the strange things which people are trying to sell online. Okay, now talk about something which is more interesting. More interesting means this is something which we never thought that the traders can go at this level. This is finding a tarantula in Western Ghats, and a few days later, you find a person coming from abroad, from Poland, who is coming to India and collecting this tarantula from a non-protected area, because in the scientific paper it was written where all you find this tarantula, what is the habitat you find this tarantula. So one of the enterprising trader comes from all the way from Poland to India, come to the exact location and get to the tarantula, collect it, take photographs, go back to his country and post it online that he found his tarantula. and a few days later, you're selling it online for $90. Now, this is the kind of threat which we are facing. You discover a species in your country, and suddenly a trader sitting half the world away from you is finding that this has got a market value, collect the animal, go there, breed it, and sell it online. And it's as simple as that. In his country, it is not illegal. In his country, it is probably legal to sell this tarantula. But this tarantula was discovered in India, and he's listing it with the scientific name. It's a 2.5 centimeter hatchling. I mean, it's a young one. So he's selling it for $90. He must have sold a couple of hundreds of thousands of this one, and made money. So that's the volume of the trade, and that's what the future is looking like. That is what the latest challenge. I'm not expanding, but if any of you ask me what is the biggest challenge in wildlife crime is it's the crime getting into the cyberspace and getting more organized. Ban the tiger traders or the leopard traders. This is going to be the challenging thing. And with that, thank you very much. And I think I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Josh. What a session it was. I mean, it's eye-opening. It's scary, actually, looking at it.
I never wanted to scare any of you.
It's an eye-opening thing. I mean, it's scary, actually, when scientists, I also was a part of describing few species and all, frogs and all. But yeah, I just realized when you want to describe something, it's actually scary. People have started using the research purpose to find out animals. Okay, do you want to just go through some of the questions and answer it?
David, probably, the crime charged me up a little bit more. So I think, for me to be in the right spirit of mind, I should talk about crime day in and day out.
Okay.
Now I'm up for questions.
The question is, hello sir, after the natural death of animal, if the animal's part are collected, will it be illegal as well?
If you're speaking from India, it is illegal. An animal article is supposed to be a wildlife product, which is you cannot collect it and keep it with you, even if it is naturally died animal. As per the Indian law, it is illegal.
Okay, probably we'll take. Do you want to take a lot of questions or 5-6 questions because you're tired? I mean, I don't want to keep you.
No, David, it is okay. I mean, I feel very good, better, probably charged up.
Okay. Okay. Okay, how can you find out the birds which are sold by the pet shops are wild, collected, or capture breed one? From Abhisha.
Any species which is found in India and sold is illegal, whether it is captive bred animal. As per the Wildlife Protection Act, an animal which is caught from the wild or born in captivity is considered as a wild animal. So, for example, if you have 2 parakeets and you bred them, and there is an offspring which was born in captivity, and you cannot say that is born in captivity and it is not illegal, it is not wild collected. So, as per the law, even if it is born in captivity, it is illegal. So there is no question about you finding, you looking at whether it is captive bred or wild caught. A species which is listed in the Wildlife Protection Act, and even if it is captive born or wild caught, it is illegal. If it is an exotic species is a species which is not listed in the Wildlife Protection Act. It may not be illegal. You have to check the CITES provisions to ensure that this is not a CITES restricted animal. So any animal which is listed in the Wildlife Protection Act is illegal to own, keep, or breed. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I'm skipping few, not the relevant questions. So, okay, there's a question from Srikumaraman. Do you think that Indian high courts are able to control wildlife crime as per the Wildlife Acts? Second question from him. Okay.
Yeah,
Also,
it is it is a judiciary who actually at the end of the day gives the punishment. Um, uh, if the judiciary is determined, uh, they can they are one of the major deterrents to wildlife crime. But the problem is not at the judiciary level. The problem is at the documentation level of wildlife crime. We train a lot of frontline forest staff, and I know how our frontline staff, you know, document the crime, and the kind of support which they receive in managing wildlife crime. Detection of the crime is only the stage one. The investigation, the documentation, and presenting the case in the court is a long thing. The major problem in judiciary is that not all our judges are sensitized towards wildlife crime. Many of them understand the importance, but many of them don't understand. But there are very good examples of learned judges giving exemplary punishments. Yes, the judiciary should give stricter punishments under the provisions of the act. But once a judge asked me this question, or given me this statement after an interactive session. He said, in a court, in my court, in the morning, there was a rape case where an accused raped a teenager, and he's standing there. I punish him for 7 years or more than that because he has committed a heinous crime. And then there is a murderer, then there is a dacoit, and then your forest department brings a person who killed a tiger or even killed a python, and say that this fellow has committed a very serious crime which also attract 7 years of punishment. So he says that that is when we start wondering, whether we can give that kind of punishment. I mean, judges are human beings, so you need a lot of sensitization, and some of the judgments from very good judges actually created deterrence in wildlife crime management. I say that it is more than the judge; it is the investigation officer and the team who present the cases in the court. Who they are more responsible. How you follow up the cases in the court, how you follow up the cases in the trial court, how you ensure your bail rejections happen, how you ensure that arrest warrants are issued. There's a lot of those kind of things are required in the front line to reduce wildlife crime.
okay. The same. Two more questions from you. Also, do you think lack of environmental and wildlife lawyers in India is the reason for the increase of wildlife crimes? And also,
Yes.
what step WWF?
David, I can answer that because many times people say that our laws are not good. If you read the Wildlife Protection Act in India, India's Wildlife Protection Act is one of the toughest laws in the world to protect wildlife. Our act talks about restrictions, prohibiting of things like we don't allow hunting, we don't allow consumption. We have clearly defined protected areas. So our law is not weak. Our law enforcement probably is weaker. The law as such, the law is one of the best laws in the country. And with the new amendments, the law is going to get more teeth. But how to use it, that is the biggest challenging thing. A weapon is as good as the person who's handling it. So in this case, I will say that the law is as good as the one who's practicing it and implementing it.
And what steps have WWF taken in this measure? How many cases they have won across India? I don't know. You would be able to answer that.
No, I mean, why not? WWF is also doing a lot of conservation work across the country, and one of the leading organizations working on wildlife crime. They also support legal cases and court cases, and also conduct a lot of training programs under WWF and traffic leadership. Dr. Saket, who is a good friend, does a lot of training programs across the country, and things like their sniffer dog programs and training programs, which are good. But WWF is not the convicting agency. They assist in court matters to various courts, but I don't have an exact number.
Okay.
Of course, they do a lot of good work across the country.
Something about otter skin trade from Srikumar Doctor.
It is Dr. Srikumar. It is something which we are revisiting and looking at. A couple of places where otters trade was very much happening. is not in those areas also there is otter killing happening, but it is not for the skin. It is largely because of conflict, because otters get into a lot of conflict with people, because otters are good fish raiders. So fish farm owners kill otters by electrocution and putting snares and all. The skin demand is actually much more reduced than like what was in the past. Otter skins were one of the most sought after things in the past, but not anymore.
Okay. How can one tighten our customs and enforcement at the airports to tighten the control such smuggling of small insects like spiders?
Difficult and very difficult, because your X-ray machines will never show you a spider, and there are innovative methods of hiding these things. Only preventive intelligence or advanced intelligence can prevent this. Probably specialized sniffer dogs are one of the best options to prevent this kind of smuggling, but not always people smuggle it themselves. Like they go to foreign post office and book things. You can hide. I'm not going to teach how to smuggle things, but there are hundreds of methods to smuggle a gecko from India to, say, to Netherlands. There are so many ways. So it is very difficult. And the methods of sensitization of customs people, watch out for interesting things, profiling of passengers. What we call is it's preventive intelligence. That is the only thing which you can look at. And if people are collecting things, then it is the local level intelligence gathering and monitoring of people. That is the only thing. See, for example, if somebody is smuggling orchid, they just make a bouquet and smuggle it. It's open smuggling. Like nobody will look at that because it's a bunch of flowers. So agencies has to understand what things are being smuggled.
Okay. There's another question. Where can you report the crimes happening in cyber world?
Currently, it is the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau which can and which is the nodal agency which can deal with wildlife crime anywhere in the country. There are dedicated offices, and their website has got a dedicated email ID where you can send the information about wildlife crime. And knowing few officers in the bureau, they do take action. I mean, there are a bunch of proactive officers, and they're taking actions as much as they can, because many times people say that our agencies are not doing anything, but once you start looking at them closely, you understand that with all the constraints and all the practical problems, they all do a lot of things. So inform Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, they will definitely take action.
Okay, there's a question from Vineet Mahavia. So will you please tell me there's a case reported for the smuggling Eric's Johnny in India, and what action taken during that time?
There are a number of cases on Eric's Johnny being smuggled within Indo-Nepal border or other things. There are cases registered, there are convictions happened. Eric's Johnny is protected under Schedule 3 of the Wildlife Protection Act, so it attracts lesser punishment, and also there is a provision of compounding the case. So the DFO with his judicial power actually can compound the case, find the person, and compound the case. Or if it goes to the court also has the authorities to compound the case and find the case. Not only one case, probably hundreds of cases happened across the country. Some got convictions, some got some got acquitted because of lack of evidences. But it is not one case, but many cases.
Okay, there's an interesting question coming up. Being a wild animal, how can an elephant be maintained in captive by private owners? Is it a crime or not?
Captive elephants, there are no domestic elephants. If you notice the wordings, the Wildlife Protection Act talks about a captive animal. Captive animals are animals which are kept by people in captivity. Now, elephants are owned by private owners and religious places across the country, because elephants were used in logging activities and forestry activities and cultural things. So there is a provision in states. For example, Kerala has a captive elephant management rules and all, where a captive elephant, an elephant which is uh, kept by a private owner is a captive elephant, and it is kept. But no more new elephants can be captured from the wild and kept as captive elephants. So all these elephants which are currently in captivity are supposed to be, I put inverted commas, supposed to be elephants which were declared by their rightful custodians, not owners. The Wildlife Protection Act gives you a custodianship, not the ownership of the elephant. Even though some places the document is written as ownership, it's a custodianship of the elephant. The custodianship is given to a private owner, and the elephant is treated as a wild animal, a Schedule 1 animal, but it is kept in the custody of a private owner. And once the elephant is dead, the tusk, if it is a tusker, the tusk is marked by the State Forest Department and given back to the custodian for his custodianship. So as per the law, there are no new elephants which are captured from the wild is getting into the captivity. Yes, captive elephants are a big gray area to deal
with. There's a question from Rohan. Some of these dark characters you talk about are the tribal people who are not given an avenue to make honest living. Yes, there is organized crime, no doubt, though poverty and the lack of opportunity to make an honest living is a huge reason for less fortunate people to get into his trade. Right now, over the last 2 months, poaching and such activities have gone up for obvious reasons. We can very well speak from a position privilege, but we don't need to do worries as they were next meal come from. We need to address the poverty around wildlife areas before we expect certain income bracket of people to worry about conservation. Catching
with.
less force. Okay.
When we talk about crime, let's not mix it with poverty. Somebody, I mean, I talked about this, and also the darker people, or the that was a slang which I used. I don't say that only the tribals hunt. Let me tell you, if a tribal family is hunting for their existence in the remote forest or in the forest, probably as per the law it is illegal, and it may have its own justifications. As per the law it is illegal in India, except a few tribes in Andamans. Nobody has rights to hunt. But when a tribal or anybody, I'm not talking about a tribal for hunting. When I talked about the people from Nagaland coming to Kaziranga for hunting, they probably belongs to a particular tribe. But being a tribal, and you come to Kaziranga to hunt a rhino, it is not for poverty. It is not to save you from dying from hunger, because you want to kill a rhino and make about 5 to 6 lakhs overnight, and that is why you come. When the need is replaced with greed, then there is a problem. So it is not about the tribal hunting for his existence. That may not be a big crime. That may not be having such a huge impact on the ecosystem. I know a lot of tribes who used to hunt. I mean, I have my personal views on that. If tribals were hunting in our forest for thousands and hundreds and thousands of years, but they never wiped out our forests. They have their rules. You go to Northeast, you go to some of this tribal clans, they have defined hunting season. They got defined hunting areas, and they follow those rules like religious rules. So they don't violate those rules. If you violate, you are punished severely by the community. They know how to make it sustainable. But the problem is when this is influenced by greed, because when you look at a tribal who was hunting a wild pig for his meat, but tomorrow he gets into hunting spotted deer or some other thing because he can sell the meat in the local market and make some money. That is when the problem happens. See, classic examples are like when I was talking to somebody who used to hunt, and he said that I asked him, why you got into this? Then हम तो पहले करते थे. I mean, हम अपने घर के लिए करते थे. We used to do it for our home. But when these people from outside started giving me 500 rupees, 600 rupees per kilo for meat, and the price increased to 1000, 1500 for bush meat, I got into the commercial part of it. So for him, it was making money. So there is a clear difference between greed and need. Need is different and greed is different. And the recent lockdown period hunting, not everybody is starving and they have to hunt and they have to survive. What is the explanation we can give to the people who actually smuggled wild meat in an ambulance in Karnataka? Was it because of absolute poverty? They were using an ambulance to smuggle wild meat. So that was not absolute poverty. That was for profit. My personal view is, if a tribal is hunting an animal for his own consumption or his family's consumption, that has got some community justification, but no legal justification. No. When we talk about law is impartial. Law is black and white. Law does not permit you to hunt under any circumstances. And let us, when we have a law, let us obey it and respect it. That's my answer.
Okay, Josh, I have a question just to. So, how do you change this thing? How can you change this scenario?
About tribals hunting?
Anybody around a wildlife protected area want to hunt?
It's not easy, David. It is like asking, how can you stop, theft and prostitution? These are a couple of things which used to happen from the beginning of history and probably continue for a long time. As long as there is a demand and there is a supply, these kind of illegal activities happen. I don't have a definite answer. I mean, if you say, when can you stop hunting? I don't know. I mean, when can you stop hunting? I really don't know when the hunting will stop. Because every time there is a demand for wild meat. My community, who's the Christians from central Kerala, is notoriously famous for hunting. So I know how a couple of people in my own family looks at wildlife. I mean, they all remember the good old days where they used to go for hunt and get animals. There is a fascination, and hunting is probably in our blood. I mean, if you look at deep down into us, we as advanced primates, we do have some tendency to hunt. So I really don't think that hunting will stop ever.
Okay. There's a question. Barn owls and red sandboas are illegally traded in Kerala. Do you have any idea on the end users and why there is a huge demand?
See, that will take another 2 days to explain this, but let me tell you, there is no market for barn owls and red sandboa. This is a trade which is based on baseless stories. There is no end user. It is a it's a catch-22 situation. Somebody creates a demand, somebody supply barn owl. Trust me, there are no end users. There is no use of red sandboa. If you heard about all these things, bioiridium in red sandboa, or some sort of some well-known industries are using red sandboa for various things. No, it's all baseless stories. It is a trade which came up in Kerala or many parts of South India. There is no end user. There is no market.
Okay, can you please put your email ID in the chat? We'll take one more question. I think it's almost 8.
Yeah, David, what I'll do is I'll just add a slide and I'll add my email ID there, so anyone can just at the PPI.
Okay.
So that's my email ID, and I welcome anybody who's trying to get in touch with me. Please do. I will respond to you, because talking about crime is something which I really love. You can see, I was actually sleeping or lying down in my bed, and I During the day, I called up a couple of times. I called up David and I asked him that, David, can we postpone it? But look, this is something close to heart, and I mean, I try to respond.
Okay, just one more question probably we can take. Which end of the stick should we address, the demand side or the supply side?
The demand. Simple, clear. If there is no demand, there is no supply. It's a demand-driven industry. So you cut the demand, the supply will stop. If you cannot cut the demand, then you cut the channels. In pure enforcement language, we talk something as disablers. In any criminal activities, you find the disablers. Disablers are things which will create problems of conducting the illegal activity. So if the demand is not within the country, you create disablers. You create disablers to disrupt the trade. That is how you address it. You keep on addressing the supply. It may not change. It may not stop. The demand has to be stopped.
Okay, thank you so much, Jose. It was wonderful. So,
Thank you, David.
Yeah, it is a pleasure hearing you. On behalf of both the Nature Club and Kottayam Nature Society and Alappuzha Natural History Society, we extend our thanks.